Hello there. Tonya Bennett was a young woman living in Portland, Oregon. She had long brown hair, deep brown eyes, and a radiant smile that brightened everyone's day. Tonya always exuded a refreshing vibe, and although some people thought her reactions were a bit slow and her intellect somewhat immature for her age, this quality made it easier for her to connect with others. They found her presence comforting. However, on a January day in 1990, this beloved young woman suddenly disappeared at the age of just 23. When her family reported her missing to the Portland police on January 21, 1990, a week had already passed since anyone last saw her. Shockingly, just a day later, on January 22nd, investigators discovered Tonya's body in the Columbia Gorge, over 50 miles east of Portland. Unfortunately, Tonya had been dead for some time. The autopsy revealed that she had died from asphyxiation, and she had also been sexually assaulted and beaten before her death. What was particularly troubling was that the police found almost no evidence of the perpetrator at the crime scene or on Tonya's body. Furthermore, her relationships with family and friends appeared to be very positive, making it difficult for investigators to identify a suspect among them. Nonetheless, the police did have one suspicious individual in mind from the outset. In fact, a college student had stumbled upon Tonya's body on January 22nd while hiking in the Columbia Gorge. However, at that time, the police had not yet identified a suspect, so this student naturally became the prime suspect. Surprisingly, after a brief questioning, investigators sensed something was off about him. The student claimed he was at the gorge to relax after exams, yet typically students go in groups, and he was alone. Additionally, the weather on January 22nd was particularly rainy, making it an unlikely choice for an outing. Despite this, the police could not find any evidence linking him to the crime, and the investigation hit a dead end. As you may have seen in our previous videos, when faced with strange cases, police often release information to the media in hopes of garnering public assistance, and this case was no exception. After ruling out the student as a suspect, the details of the case were shared with the media, and unexpectedly, the response proved to be incredibly useful. On February 5, 1990, the Multnomah County Police received an anonymous call from a woman who reported that she overheard a man in a bar claiming to be the perpetrator of Tonya's murder, identifying himself as John Sosnowski. Initially, the police were excited by this tip, but after investigating, they found no one by that name. Just as they were dismissing it as a prank, they received another call from the Clark County Police southeast of Portland. They informed the Multnomah police that a woman had reported the suspect as John Sosnowski, and surprisingly, the Clark County Police confirmed that John Sosnowski had a DUI conviction and was currently on parole. Despite the anonymous nature of the tip, the police managed to uncover the caller's identity, Lavin Pavlina, who was John Sosnowski's girlfriend. This gave investigators a high level of confidence in her testimony. Many might think that the Multnomah police were irresponsible, but it wasn't entirely their fault. Upon further inspection, they discovered that Lavin had initially misspelled John Sosnowski's name when she reported the incident. Regardless, the details were not as crucial as the ongoing investigation, so detectives promptly set out to meet Lavin. When they arrived, she was taken aback, surprised that the police had tracked her down. At first, she denied being the one who made the call, but after some reassurance, she admitted it was indeed her. At first glance, investigators felt that Lavin was not the type to joke about such matters. At 57 years old, she was approaching her golden years, speaking slowly and seriously, showing no signs of deception. Lavin's statement detailed that on the evening of January 21, 1990, she received a call from her boyfriend John, who told her he was in big trouble and asked her to meet him in a truck parking lot in Troutdale, a city in Multnomah County. When Lavin arrived, she saw John hiding between two trucks with a blanket at his feet. To her shock, beneath the blanket lay an unmoving woman. Initially, Lavin thought the woman might just be unconscious, but John's chilling words changed everything. "This woman is dead. We need to find a place to dispose of her." In that moment, Lavin realized her boyfriend was not just in trouble. He was involved in a murder. Reluctantly, she succumbed to John's pleas and helped him dump the woman's body in the Columbia Gorge. Since then, Lavin had been haunted by the incident, frequently plagued by nightmares, which ultimately compelled her to make those 2 anonymous calls. After hearing Lavin's testimony, the police wasted no time in bringing both her and John in for questioning. John denied the allegations when confronted with his girlfriend's accusations. Unfortunately, apart from Lavin's statement, the police lacked substantial evidence, so after their investigation, they were forced to release John. Before he left the station, they secretly attached a wiretap to Lavin to encourage her to coax John into confessing the truth. However, John was no fool. After being implicated this time, he was prepared, and no matter how much Lavin pressed, he steadfastly denied any involvement in the crime. First, the police began administering a lie detector test to Lavin, while also conducting a thorough search of the truck she had mentioned. The results were astonishing. Investigators discovered a wallet and a piece of denim fabric in the truck's trunk. When Tonya was found, the investigators noted that she was missing 2 items, her wallet and her passport. Moreover, John's jeans had a significant tear, but the fabric from that tear was missing. What was even more crucial was that none of these details had been disclosed to the public. John continued to deny all accusations, insisting he had no knowledge of the situation. At that moment, the police found themselves at a standstill. First, the results of the lie detector test could not be considered official evidence. They could only serve as a reference. Second, although the wallet and piece of denim were important, the police had yet to test and compare them with related evidence, leaving the question of whether these items belonged to Tonya still unanswered. In this situation, the police could only continue monitoring John to prevent him from fleeing while expediting the evidence comparison process. Strangely, as the investigation deepened, everything seemed to stray further from its original goal. After the media released information about the case, not only did Lavin come forward, but many other enthusiastic citizens also provided leads. Although most of this information was unhelpful, there were some credible tips. For example, several witnesses reported seeing Tonya at a bar before the incident, accompanied by 2 friends. However, that bar was located 40 miles from the truck parking lot Lavin had mentioned. How had John transported Tonya? If he had his own vehicle, why did he need Lavin's help? Additionally, when the police showed witnesses pictures of John, none of them identified him as one of Tonya's friends from the bar. More importantly, upon comparison, investigators confirmed that the wallet and denim piece did not belong to Tonya. With this information, Lavin's testimony appeared completely inconsistent with the facts. Was John truly innocent? Although the wallet and fabric did not belong to Tonya, their appearance could be more than coincidental, as the police suspected that someone might have deliberately placed these items to frame John. The person capable of orchestrating such a scheme was none other than Lavin. As previously mentioned, the details about the wallet and fabric had not been made public, so only Lavin was aware of them. However, what surprised investigators was that when they confronted Lavin and informed her that the wallet and fabric were not connected to Tonya, this middle-aged woman admitted she had fabricated both items to frame John and evade responsibility herself. According to Lavin's statement, on the night of the incident, John had been drinking at a bar. As the evening progressed, he called Lavin, asking her to come pick him up. When Lavin arrived, she found John chatting with a girl who turned out to be Tonya. Seeing that her boyfriend seemed unwilling to leave, Lavin joined their conversation. To her surprise, the 3 of them got along well, and even when the bar closed, they were reluctant to part ways. Consequently, Lavin suggested giving Tonya a ride home to extend their time together, and Tonya happily accepted. However, once they were in the car, Lavin immediately sensed something was off. Typically, John would sit in the front passenger seat, but this time he sat in the back with Tonya. What was even more suspicious was that shortly after they started driving, John suddenly struck Tonya hard, causing her to lose consciousness. Lavin immediately questioned John about his intentions, but he offered no explanation, coldly instructing her to drive to a lookout point in the Columbia Gorge. Terrified of her boyfriend, Lavin complied. Upon arriving, they both pulled Tonya from the car. John then wrapped a rope around Tonya's neck and instructed Lavin to hold the other end. Before Lavin could comprehend what was happening, John lunged at Tonya, assaulting her. Tonya regained consciousness in that instant, but due to John's strength and the rope, she couldn't breathe. Despite her struggles, Tonya ultimately died after the ordeal. At that moment, Lavin realized that she had pulled the rope too tightly, leading to Tonya's death, but she had not intended for this to happen. Shocked and unable to think clearly, she shifted all the blame onto John. However, Lavin's statement couldn't mask the truth. A terrifying mystery. Indeed, Lavin's testimony aligned closely with the witness accounts, but to ensure everything was accurate, the police quickly asked her to pinpoint the exact location of the crime in the Columbia Gorge. Aside from the police and the college student who reported the incident, only the perpetrator would know Tonya's exact position. Ultimately, the results revealed that Lavin had not lied. She correctly identified the location where Tonya's body was discovered. Consequently, the police officially arrested both Lavin and John, charging them with murder. You might think the trial would proceed smoothly since the suspects had confessed, right? However, the reality was quite the opposite. On January 24, 1991, a year after the incident, the trial began. During the proceedings, Lavin unexpectedly recanted her previous testimony, claiming that everything she had said was a lie due to her own personal struggles. On the surface, Lavin appeared to be a lucky woman. At her age, she had found a boyfriend who was only 29. However, few knew that John had treated Lavin very poorly. Throughout their 10 years together, she endured immense psychological and physical trauma. Some may wonder why Lavin didn't just break up with John. The truth is that John refused to end their relationship, and every time Lavin brought it up, she was met with violence. Eventually, Lavin stumbled upon an article about Tonya in the newspaper and decided to frame John, hoping to have him imprisoned and free herself from this tormentor. However, due to numerous inconsistencies in her testimony, she couldn't deceive the police. As a result, she found herself fabricating more lies to cover up the earlier ones, which only complicated matters further and ensnared her in the case. Realizing her mistakes, Lavin attempted to retract her statement, but the judge dismissed her retraction, maintaining the ruling of life imprisonment for both her and John. This was primarily due to the detailed nature of Lavin's initial testimony, which only the perpetrator would know, alongside John's confession of guilt. Yet the story did not end there. The police discovered a bizarre incident in a small town called Livingston in Montana. Someone had written in the restroom of a public bathroom, "On January 21, 1990, I killed Tonya Bennett in Portland, Oregon. I enjoyed doing this. Although I have problems, I wanted to savor it, and now someone else has taken the fall for me, so I am still free." The message was accompanied by a smiley face. Just days later, another message appeared in the men's restroom at a truck stop in La Grande, Oregon. "I killed Tana Bennett in Portland. 2 people have taken the blame for me, so I can continue my crimes." This message also featured a smiley face. From these writings, it appeared that the person who signed with a smiley face might be the real killer. Although the police received this information, they decided not to investigate further because the names in the messages, Tonya Bennett and Tana Bennett, did not match the actual victim's name, Tonya Bennett. Consequently, they suspected this could merely be a prank. Time passed, and it had been 3 years since the incident. In early May 1994, a local newspaper in Portland received a chilling 6-page handwritten letter. The author detailed their crimes from 1990 to 1994, spanning from Oregon to California, and importantly, the letter ended with a smiley face. Immediately, reporter Phil Stanford contacted the police. Upon reviewing the letter, investigators realized it not only contained factual information, but also included many details that only the police and the perpetrator would know. Therefore, the letter was not a joke. Because the cases mentioned in the letter were random, the police decided to publish its contents in hopes of gathering information from the public. By the end of May 1994, an article by Phil Stanford appeared on the front page of the local paper, coining the suspect as the Smiley Face Killer. The article quickly caught the public's attention, but not because of the suspect's brutality. Rather, it was the mention of the Tonya case, which occurred on January 21, 1990, and concluded in January 1991. This raised suspicions about whether 3 individuals were involved in the Tonya case, suggesting that when one was caught, the others continued to commit crimes in retaliation. Despite various theories, no conclusive answers emerged for a long time. On March 22, 1995, just 25 miles from Portland in Walla Walla, Washington, a new case arose. Julia Ann Winningham, 41, was found dead in her home. Investigators identified her boyfriend, Keith Hunter, a truck driver, as the prime suspect. The circumstances surrounding Keith's arrest were unusual. The police initially approached him without suspicion, merely asking a few questions due to his relationship with Julia. However, when they met with him, Keith seemed prepared. He insisted on having a lawyer present to cooperate, otherwise, he would remain silent. Consequently, Keith became the main suspect. Nonetheless, the sudden turn of events left investigators without enough evidence to charge him, forcing them to release him. While the police sought legal means to summon Keith back for questioning, he unexpectedly turned himself in on March 24, 1995, just 2 days after Julia's death. He confessed to killing Julia, providing a simple motive. He believed she loved him only for his status, not for who he truly was. On March 30, 1995, Keith was officially arrested. However, during this process, something suspicious occurred. Keith suddenly requested to call his brother. After the call, the police realized they had almost made a grave mistake. Keith had informed his brother about an unmailed letter on his desk and asked him to destroy it. Curious, Keith's brother opened the letter before destroying it. With just one glance, he quickly changed his mind. Instead of disposing of it, he turned the letter over to the police. Its contents closely resembled the letter received by the Oregonian from the Smiley Face Killer 10 months earlier. Since both letters were handwritten, investigators swiftly confirmed they had the same author, proving Keith was indeed the murderer they were looking for. However, this raised a perplexing question. Who was truly responsible for the Tonya case? If Keith confessed, it implied that the Portland police had wrongfully convicted someone. If he didn't, it complicated matters further. The letter referred to 5 cases involving 8 victims. But if Keith insisted the contents were merely a joke, the police would have no recourse, as the killer in the Tonya case was still at large. Assuming the first of the 5 cases was fabricated, unless decisive evidence emerged, the other 4 cases could also be dismissed as pranks. Clearly for Keith, refusing to confess seemed the more logical choice. To illustrate this point, he led the police to the discovery of Tonya's missing purse. After investigation, it was confirmed, adding yet another twist to the unfolding narrative. In November 1995, after 5 years in prison, Lavin and John were released. Here, we won't delve into terms like imprisonment or wrongful conviction to describe the prison lives of the two during this time, as John could be seen as a victim, but Laven cannot be labeled innocent. As previously mentioned, the Tonya case was indeed the first crime committed by Keith. However, Laven's lies had misdirected the investigation, allowing the real culprit to remain free and commit further crimes. While we cannot assert that without Laven's involvement, the police would have apprehended Keith from the start and prevented subsequent cases, it is certain that Laven's actions obstructed that possibility. So, if Laven wasn't the perpetrator, how did she know the precise location of the crime? Laven explained to reporters that she had initially gathered numerous details about the crime scene from news reports, and after reporting to the police, she gleaned quite a bit from their questions. As you can imagine, once all the information was pieced together, even a child could pinpoint the exact location in the canyon. This is how Laven managed to convince the police of her lies, ultimately leading to the case's unexpected conclusion. And with that, today's story comes to an end. Please share your thoughts in the comments below for discussion. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye, and see you next time.